I was just, talking to somebody this morning that somebody who has worked so much on nonfiction has a fiction session, like which is me in conversation with you both. And they said, well, that means that your questions will be really genuine because you know nothing about fiction. But, be that as it may, I'm a very interested fiction reader. And so I'm really interested in hearing you both talk about your books. Gabriela, you write in Portuguese, and Tonio, you write in German. Both your books that the two of you have written have received a lot of acclaim, but they're not translated in English. So would you like to begin by telling us about your books?
Okay, I'll start then. First of all, good afternoon, and thanks for coming, and thanks for the invitation to be here. It's really a great pleasure to be in Jaipur. It's my first time to India, so it's really exciting. I will begin with the first novel I published like 10 years ago. It's a bit of fiction about my family history. I can resume like that because I would like to focus more on the second novel, which is the one I published like 2 years ago and was nominated for the European Union Prize for Literature. So this second novel, it's like a plaything with the concept of time. You know, this idea that time does not exist because past, present, and future happens at the same time, which is now. So I began from this idea. I was watching a video on YouTube, and there was a guy talking about this. And I just wondered, oh, this is a really idea, a really good idea for a plot for a novel, you know. So this novel is about time. And in this novel, time does not exist. So you have different characters which are the same person, but they are in different moments of their life. So for instance, the first idea that came to my mind was a building with several floors. So in the first floor, there would be a baby living with his parents. And then on the second floor, there would be a child living with his parents as well. But this child would be the same as the baby downstairs. And in the third floor, there would be a young adult and then an old man, and they were all the same person, but they didn't know about that. So they would cross paths and greet each other, and they didn't know they were the same person living in different moments of their life. So this was the first idea for the book, and the book develops from here.
Tonio?
Yes, hi. I'm also really happy to be here. I was born in India, and this is the first time I came back since being born. So I really enjoy it. Well, I've written 2 books as well. My first novel is called Nicht wie ihr, which translates to Not Like You. And it's about a professional football player from Austria and tells more or less 1 year in his life. It's as you know, professional football players have very little free time. So it starts with his holidays, which is at the end of the season, so in June. And then it's 1 year, and it tells a story about mostly his depression and his falling in love with somebody despite being married and having kids. And my second novel, which is this one, is called Echtzeitalter, which roughly translates to the age of real time, and it's a school novel where the protagonist is a student in a very conservative boarding school in Vienna, and he's very interested in computer games, especially in one that's already kind of vintage, which is called Age of Empires 2. It's the game is older than this young man playing it, because the game is from 1999, and my protagonist is born in 2002. But it's still a game that's being played, a strategy game, and I mean, it talked obviously. Every book is about more than one thing, but that would be the short summary, I think.
Thank you both. Would you both like to read a short paragraph from your books, first in the original and then tell us what it means, mainly because JLF is such a celebration of languages that it would be lovely to hear a little bit of your languages, in terms of your writing.
Yes. So I'll start. Just need to open. So I'm gonna read first in Portuguese, and then I'll read the same excerpt in English translation. Okay? I need to take my glasses off, otherwise I can't see. So, a jornalista. Decididamente isto não está a correr bem. Ficar exultante com a proposta do chefe de redação para entrevistar Luís Ricardo Reis, o último escritor revelação, um fenómeno literário como há muito não se via no país, porventura como nunca se vira. Tinha ali a oportunidade de fazer, ela também, a sua reportagem revelação. Era um mundo cão este, tão poucas as histórias realmente interessantes, aquelas que poderiam fazer história. Um mundo de micro-histórias, micro-notícias, a maioria desinteressantes, nada de novo a anunciar, porque a quantidade de novidades por minuto era tal que tudo expirava rapidamente. As calamidades sucediam-se, as naturais e as outras. Já nem as bacuradas que saíam da boca do presidente dos Estados Unidos surpreendiam. O mundo perdera a capacidade de se espantar, de se maravilhar, de se indignar, de se ofender, embora parecesse o contrário, as emoções ao rubro, as queixas de ofensas e assédios a multiplicarem-se como nunca se vira, as mulheres a ganharem voz, uma multidão aos gritos, mas no meio de gritos ninguém se entende e rapidamente deixamos de ouvir o essencial ou de prestar atenção ao que é importante. Como manter o foco da atenção nos dias que correm? Aí estava uma boa questão e um tema suculento. Mas hoje em dia as pessoas não querem ler matérias suculentas. Isso dá muito trabalho. As notícias querem-se como as fotografias, flashes de palavras que eternizem uma ideia. Poucas. Pensar é cansativo. Ler parágrafos intermináveis ainda mais. Tudo tem de ser de digestão leve, abertura fácil, poucas calorias, mínimo esforço mental. So now I'm going to read in English.
Gabriela, do you want to tell us a little bit about who is saying, what's
Oh,
happening
yes.
in there?
So this is a novel. So this is the reporter. The chapter is called The Reporter. And she's a reporter who is going to interview a famous author. Okay? And she's thinking in her head in anticipation of this interview. And this is midway through the interview, it's like she's thinking to herself these words. Okay, so the reporter. This certainly isn't going well. She had been thrilled by the chief editor's proposal that she interview Luís Ricardo Reis, the last breakout sensation, a literary phenomenon unlike any that had been seen in the country for quite some time, if ever. She found herself presented with the chance to produce a breakout article of her own. It was a dog-eat-dog world they were living in. So few really interesting stories, ones that could make history. a world of micro stories, micro news items, the majority of them uninteresting, nothing new to report, because the quantity of news stories per minute was such that everything expired quickly. Disasters took place, both natural and otherwise. And now, not even the drivel coming from the mouth of the President of the United States could surprise anyone. The world had lost its capacity for shock, for wonder, for indignation, for taking offense, although it seemed the opposite was also true. Flared emotions, accusations of abuse and harassment multiplying like never before. Women had gained a voice, become a baying crowd, but in the midst of an uproar, no one can understand each other, and we soon stop hearing the essential or paying attention to what's important. Like how to maintain focus on these times we are living through. Now, there was a good subject, a juicy topic. But these days, people no longer want to read about juicy topics. It's too much work. People want articles like photographs, a flash of words that will eternalize an idea. Very few words, because thinking is tiring and reading interminable paragraphs even more so. Everything must be easy to digest, accessible, low on calories, minimal mental exertion. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tonio, you're going to read from your German Book Prize winning novel.
Okay, so this is going to be in German, but afterwards I'm going to read the same in English as well. Sieht man diesen Ort zum ersten Mal, das Schloss mit der Schönbrunner gelben Fassade und der abbröckelnden graugelben Rückseite, den Park mit seinen Wiesen und Sportplätzen, seinem bewaldeten Hügel und seiner Grotte, dann ist die Mauer, die ihn umgibt und deren Höhe je nach Steigung der Argentinier- und Favoritenstraße zwischen 2 und 4 Metern schwankt, wahrscheinlich das Letzte, was einem auffällt. Warum sollte man auch an die Mauer denken beim Tag der offenen Tür? Die Kinder sehen ja so viel anderes. Die Tennis- und Beachvolleyballplätze, das Hallenbad, den Parkettturnsaal, die Multifunktionshalle, die Sala Terrena und, wenn sie ihren Blick nach unten auf die eigenen Füße richten, den Steinboden, dessen große Platten über die Jahrhunderte von tausenden Schlapfen glattgeschliffen wurden. Außerdem zeigt man den Kindern die Fußballplätze, die 2 Fun-Courts, den Hartplatz, den First-Tee-Platz und vor allem den großen Platz, der auf allen Fotos abgebildet ist und dem Park gemeinsam mit der ihn umgebenden Laufbahn etwas Offizielles, etwas Highschoolhaftes verleiht, auch wenn sie nach dem Tag der offenen Tür nie wieder dort spielen werden, weil der große Platz Gegenstand eines seit Jahren andauernden Rechtsstreits ist, dem mit dem Hinweis Platz gesperrt, betreten auf eigene Gefahr Rechnung getragen wird. Von all dem wissen die zukünftigen Marianisten noch nichts. Man erzählt ihnen vom Fremdsprachenangebot, von Schulreisen, Austauschprogrammen, sogenannten unverbindlichen Übungen, in denen die Schüler jeder denkbaren Leidenschaft von Schach über Skifahren bis Aquaristik nachgehen können, aber man zeigt ihnen nicht die Stelle beim Konferenzzimmer, an der trotz einer zusätzlichen Schicht Farbe noch immer der Name des ehemaligen Erziehungsleiters durchscheint, begleitet von den Worten "Du Kinderficker". When I was in university, you could always tell the cool kids because they read from the phones, so it's kind of horrible. When you see this place for the first time, the grand mansion house with its Schönbrunn yellow facade and the crumbling yellowy-gray rear, the grounds with their lawns and playing fields, their wooded hills and grottos, then the wall surrounding it, which varies in height between 2 and 4 meters, depending on the gradient of Argentinierstraße and Favoritenstraße, is probably the last thing you notice. And why would you think about the wall on an open day? The children see so many other things. The tennis and beach volleyball courts, the indoor pool, the wooden floored gymnasium, the multi-purpose hall, the sala terrena, and, when they look down at their own feet, the stone floor, whose great flags have been worn smooth over the centuries by thousands of house shoes. The children are also shown around the football pitches, the two multi-sport courts, the hard court, the firsty field, and, most importantly, the large field, which is in all the photos and, together with the running track that encircles it, gives the grounds an official air, a high school air, even if these children will never play there again after the open day, because the large field is the subject of a long-running legal battle to which the notice, "Field closed, enter at your own risk," bears witness. As yet, the future Marianists know nothing of all this. They are told about the foreign languages offered, about school trips, exchange programs, the extracurricular activities, under which banner students can pursue every conceivable passion, from chess to skiing or fish keeping. But they aren't shown the spot by the conference room where, despite an extra coat of paint, the name of the former director of learning still shows through, along with the words "kiddie fiddler."
Thank you, thank you. Tonio, this is the book that is set in a boarding school, right? And the central protagonist is a 15-year-old boy who is also a gamer. In the book, you have talked about the world of gaming as a sort of a very creative expression, as an escape into imagination, and which I think is a very positive spin on gaming, because we usually think of gaming as, you know, this void in which young people just go in and, you know, they're lost. So would you like to say a little bit about this?
Well, I think that might be a little bit generational, or maybe a question of perspective. I understand that if you're a parent and you have a child and you just see that child sitting at the computer and you don't know what's happening, then it might cause fear, probably. So one of my goals with this novel was to try to show what happens while that child is at the computer, because I think if you don't immerse yourself in what's actually happening there, then of course it's difficult to understand how much creativity those worlds offer, and then logically, there must be something really attractive about computer games. Otherwise, they wouldn't be the world's largest entertainment industry by now, larger than cinema, larger than music. And I understand that parents might see it differently unless they maybe, which is quite possible, have themselves grown up playing computer games. So in the book, there's one chapter where this boy tries to explain to his mother what he's doing. So what he does is he shows her a YouTube video which features him playing, because he's quite in this very subcultural little game. He's quite famous. So he shows her the recording of one of his tournament games to try to make her understand not only that he's really good, but also how it works. And it doesn't work. So his mom doesn't
Is
really
not
understand,
impressed.
and so the chapter ends with him realizing it might not be possible to immerse his mom into this world. But I think the very fact that she tries to understand and that she's interested enough to look at it and to listen to him instead of only saying, okay, you're wasting your time, shows that she wants to understand and he wants her to understand. So that's the most important step in understanding, I think.
This is also very universal, isn't it? This conflict between generations, this inability to understand each other, and then sometimes trying to understand. So this is, of course, this goes way beyond. This is something that is universal to all generations across the globe. So it sort of takes your book beyond just the milieu that it's set in.
Definitely, you just have to look at how novels were talked about when novels were something new, and they emerged in Britain, and people said the most terrible things about what reading novels will do to the youth and to women especially. So I think it only changes. There's going to be a new thing when I'm a little older, and I'm going to think, okay, the computer games I played were all right, but this new stuff is definitely too much. So I'm looking forward to that.
Gabriela, you have a background in psychology, and you now write, you've written these novels, you write short stories. Can you tell us a bit about how your practice in psychology and your training in psychology has helped you write? How has that informed your storytelling?
Yes, I really don't practice psychology. I have a degree in psychology, and I started working when I finished the degree. Back there, I was in Portugal, my country. And the thing is, in Portugal, it's very hard to find a job when you finish your degree. So I worked like for 3 years in voluntary work, and I also did some training, which was paid. But then I became pregnant with my first child, and I had to stop altogether because I didn't have a working contract. So I think this is a story that is universal as well, these difficulties, isn't it? And so I never worked in my professional area. That's the truth. So I only have the theory and the studies that I did back then. But in a way, I like to think that in a way it helps me creating characters with psychological, how do you say, with deep psychological characters, as I can say that. Again, because people are not black and white, right? We are not just bad or just good. We are a mixture of all these, and we are very complex characters in a way. All of us are can be characters. So I think it helps me in that way. But apart from that, I don't think it mingles in my stories. No.
Tonio, your works are set in Vienna, which is where you live. You've lived for a long time. And in fact, your first book, I think, was praised for how Viennese it was, how in terms of its, the slang in it or the language in it or the setting in it and so on. So at one level, I suppose it was it was a book that was physically located in a place and, in a milieu. But what according to you is the universal aspect of it? What was something in it that, say, somebody sitting in Jaipur might respond to?
Well, I think both my books are very located. The first sentence that I just read locates the book in between two specific streets in Vienna. We talked about this a little bit beforehand, that for us Austrians, we have 9 million inhabitants, which to an Indian audience might seem very ridiculous for a country. And Germany is a lot bigger. It has 80 million. So as a writer who depends on the language, it's very important to access Germany and to be read in Germany. So what happens is that some writers think that to do that, they have to limit their specific Austrian aspects. And I see it quite contrarily. I think that every story is universal, because we are all humans, despite all the differences. But if you try to make it universal by diminishing the regional aspects, then it just loses a lot, I think. So I was quite lucky to be able to do this and to be well received in Germany, because in fact I think the Germans, they're interested in the differences, just like, I don't know, like the differences between Portugal and Brazil, or between Spain and the Spanish-speaking Latin American countries. And so it's a kind of a difficult relationship at sometimes, but I think it's nice to learn something from books about culture, other cultures, and every small place has their own very specific culture, and I'm very much against omitting this in order to have a more general public, or to be more readable. So I think it's quite hard to translate this, or maybe it's not as interesting for everybody, but for those who are interested, it's more interesting this way, and that's how I like it.
So something that we have, learned also over our conversations is that so your books are read in all the countries that speak that language. So it's if you write in German, your books are read not just in Austria but also in Germany, which is a larger market, a larger readership, as you said. And your books, Gabriela, are not just read in Portugal, in Portuguese, but also, let's say, in Brazil, which is also a Portuguese-speaking country. So I would like to just ask both of you this question, is that what sort of feedback or reviews or something, because you told me that the language might be the same, but the nuances are different in the different countries. The nuances of speaking or in writing might be different. So what sort of a feedback have you got from the other countries that speak your language and might have read your books, if there's anything that stands out?
Well, I haven't had quite a lot of feedback yet, but the language is pretty the same. So, I mean, everybody can understand Portuguese in Brazil, also in Mozambique or Angola in Africa, and also in Timor-Leste. Portuguese language is quite a big language worldwide.
This is the colonial legacy, of course.
Yes, but there's a problem as well, because, and this is my opinion, of course, I don't think we work together. I think Portuguese language literature could be much well known worldwide if we work together. Okay, all the countries that speak Portuguese. I don't think it's the case. I mean, I think we try, but we haven't found yet the good way, the way that works out. So it's a bit tricky. For instance, not many people in Portugal read Brazilian authors, and the same is true. I personally read because I love them, and I know a few people read, but not many people, So it's kind of there's a difficulty in communication, and I think that's something we need to work on. Yeah, definitely.
Antonio, you said you have done many, many book readings in Germany, and you've traveled, and your book is widely read. Your books are widely read there. So what about you? Have you received any sort of feedback other than what you have already mentioned about the place and so on?
Well, the Germany, Austria, and a part of Switzerland, at least, we share a language, but it's quite different. And the Germans, to them, the Austrian German is kind of sweet. They think it's a little ridiculous, I think, but also they like it. So they have a lot of sympathy. And Austrian writers are very overrepresented in Germany. So if you look at the 80 millions of Germans, the 9 million Austrians, and you look at the most famous German language writers, then at least maybe 40% of them are Austrian. So Austria brings out a lot of writers, quite opposite to Switzerland, I might add, which might be underrepresented in German literature overall. I think there's cultural reasons for that. So why does Croatia have so many good football players? Well, because they used to have them before. Why does Poland have such a great cinema? Well, because they have a tradition of it. So there's not a lot you can do about it, and it's not a merit per se. It's not a merit of the Austrian state or the actual the way they can influence it. So I think it goes further than that. It's just tradition basically. And then at the same time, this attitude of Germans of not taking Austria quite seriously is something we profit of, because, for example, in Germany now they're about to make a shift to the right politically, and they're very worried about that. And we Austrians have had a very right-wing political landscape for a long time. And for example, this aspect is something that Germans, I wouldn't say they overlook it, but they don't take it as seriously as maybe they should have. So it goes both ways, and it's a very complicated relationship. But we as writers, we can be very thankful to share language with a bigger country, because I don't know, I met somebody once who translates Robert Musil's The Man Without Eigenschaften to Albanian. You can imagine how limited the audience is for such a topic. So in a world that's totally globalized, and in which I think you have more in common with somebody who lives at the other end of the world and shares an interest than with your next door neighbor, literature is kind of different, because it still depends a lot on the language, and that kind of separates you from everybody who doesn't speak the language and who can't read what you write and whose works you can't read. So it's kind of sad, but also interesting, and that's the way it is.
That's where translations come in, and why they are so increasingly becoming important.
Yes, but translations, I mean, with prose, it might work out somehow, but as soon as you get to poetry, it's more of a new interpretation. It's not,
True.
you can't say that you read it if you only read the translation.
True. At this point, I'd like to ask the audience if there are any questions.
Hi, my question is to Gabriela. The concept you mentioned about your book, the time and there is no future or there is no past. It's a quite interesting concept, and I would love to read your book. But do you have any plans to translate that in English in future, or if you have any summary of that on YouTube or something like that? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't get that all. The sound is a bit
Any plans
tricky.
to have it translated into English?
If I already have any plans. Well, I've been trying, I live in the UK. I'm Portuguese, but I live in the UK for 20 years. And my first novel, as I said, was published like 10 years ago. And I've been trying to get a translation since then. So you can imagine how hard it is. I haven't succeeded yet, although this time I'm very hopeful, because this second novel was nominated for this European Union Prize, and usually they get translated. This novel is going to be translated into Serbian and another language that I can't remember now. But at least it has 2 translations planned. So I'm hoping to get more and probably get into the English as well. That's fingers crossed for that.
This gentleman in green, please.
Hello, hello. Yeah. So, Tonio, I'm really excited to read your novel at some point as a fan of Age of Empires 2 myself. And Ms. Ruivo, I was very intrigued by the premise, and I just wanted to learn from you how you deal with balancing the way that a character has grown, as you said in your novel. How you keep the uniformity of the character, the uniformity of their voice throughout the different phases of their lives and as they grow. So how do you make sure that the voice of the character as a child and an older person, how it remains the same and how it changes?
Um, well, the book tells his life between the ages of 10 and 18, but it's not told from his perspective. Not by it's narrated by an I don't know, omnipotent narrator. So I think that's because my first novel, Nicht wie ihr, was very character driven. So it's kind of an inner monologue of this football player. So for the second one, I wanted to do something really different. And I think it was necessary because if, I didn't want this 10-year-old to tell his story, how he would describe it with the words of a 10-year-old. And this way I could change topics also. So I wasn't. It's not very character focused, and I think I even writing it, I didn't really know at the start. I didn't even know how this boy would turn out. So for me, that was something nice because I think growing up, you might yourself don't know exactly how you will turn out, and so for me, it worked out pretty well while writing. Even though I was worried at the start if I could write a whole book about a character that I didn't properly know yet, but I feel it turned out quite all right, so that his development is kind of happens. It happens even though it's not very dramatic.
Gabriela,
What? Sorry.
you want to respond to his question about the voice of character,
the
of the character
creation
and how,
of
yeah.
the characters. Yes. Well, in this book, in this particular book, I made up this universe where people like that meet each other and they are the same person, but they don't know about. And in the beginning, the reader doesn't know about that as well. So slowly it develops, and they found out. For instance, the main character is this famous author, and then one day he meets an old man in a hospital who is dying. He has a terminal cancer, and this old man starts talking to him as if he knew him. And he is quite puzzled. And then he realizes the man has the same name as as his name, which is also funny because he's known as a different name, because he signs with a pseudonym, and he uses that pseudonym like publicly, so no one knows his real name. And this old man knows his real name and is really puzzled. So in this story, it develops a bit as a mystery. You don't know what's going on in the beginning as a reader. You don't know really what's going on, but slowly you put the pieces together, and in the end, the puzzle makes sense. Well, that's my hope. But so far, the feedback has been positive, so I guess I I could make it.
This lady in red, and then this, I think 2 more questions.
Hi, I'm Srila. Thank you for the panel. I wanted to ask, so yesterday I attended a panel in which Mr. Vikas Swarup said that there is no global story. They're just local stories that have global resonance. And to that, I wanted to ask you that do you think that so far maybe the translations of your works might be lacking somewhere in that global resonance? And in the future, do you think you're going to try to model your works around themes that you think might appeal to an audience that want these translations?
Sorry, the sound is so bad. I don't know why, but I can't understand well. Is it for me or for you?
I think the acoustic is kind of.
Either of you can
okay,
take
okay.
it.
Do you want to?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes.
So from what I understand, you're saying that somebody at a panel yesterday said that there are no global stories, there are only local stories. And the reason that books might not be getting translated is because they don't appeal to a wider readership. And you want Gabriela and Tonio to tell you if they might be thinking of a more universal theme in their forthcoming books so that they reach a wider readership.
Yes, that is my question.
Well, I don't know. This novel is about more than anything about school, and school is something everybody knows, and it has different implications. I've had last year I had a reading in the German school in Ecuador, which is where my family is from. I had readings in Sweden, in Norway, and each of these countries has a very different school system. So in every country, it kind of resonates in a different way because of their particular school system, but everybody has to go to school. So it is kind of a very general topic in that sense. But I think when you start describing something, you need something very particular. Or at least that's my way of writing. And I think being, of course, every writer wants to be translated, and I'm happy about the translations into some European languages that are going to happen with this book. But at the same time, I don't know, I wouldn't focus that much on this aspect because I don't know, for example, if you're not an English native, you always seem a lot more stupid when you speak because you can't express, like right now, you can't express yourself in the way that you would like to, like Gabriela would in Portuguese and I would in German. You just have to accept that to some degree you will always be a prisoner of your own language, whatever that might be.
Thank you.
Can I just say something very quickly about that? I think as writers, we mustn't preoccupy or fill up our mind who our readership is. When we write, we just write. We don't think about the readers. We don't think about that. And I think that's the way to go, because if you are writing thinking about who is going to read you and what they will think, if they like, if they don't, you don't write anything. So I think, if something is done this way, then it has more chances of being genuine, and it has also more chances of being liked and translated. So yeah, that's...
Thank you. Thank you both. And I'm afraid we're completely out of time, but thank you so much.